So we know Assassin's Creed Mirage is getting DLC out of nowhere, 2 years down the line when they said they were never gonna do DLC beforehand. That's kinda crazy, and it's free. The new Assassin's Creed Mirage DLC Valley of Memory is coming in a couple weeks, and it's gonna add a whole new map to the world of Assassin's Creed Mirage, with a new story, all of that stuff. But today I don't really want to focus on that, because we've seen what it's gonna be, and when it comes out we can talk more about it then. The topic for today is, are we going to get more DLC for older Assassin's Creed games aside from Mirage? And to answer this, we have to take a little delve into how this whole Mirage DLC came about in the first place. So with that being said, if you're interested in this topic, you want to stay up to date, you also want chill Assassin's Creed vibes like this, then consider subscribing to the XL Live, and let's get it. You might remember, just after Assassin's Creed Mirage launched, it sold pretty well and people were saying, when's there gonna be a DLC? When can we play more Mirage? Ubisoft clapped back, or maybe not clapped back, but they responded and said, look, we're glad this has sold well, it's exceeding our expectations sales-wise, but it was a smaller title and there's not gonna be a DLC anytime soon. Fast forward 2 years, and that's completely out the window. We are getting a major expansion to Mirage. Now, the reason this came about is because Yves Guillemot, the CEO of Ubisoft, went on a trip to Saudi Arabia. Now, it wasn't like a holiday. I think he was on a proper business trip. Ubisoft has been doing pretty badly when it comes to sales at the moment, when it comes to investors pulling out, when it comes to basically the whole company as a whole sort of underperforming. They were losing a lot of money, and if they didn't get some sort of injection of cash soon, then there was a hefty chance that Ubisoft could go under. They could lose business. The Ubisoft we know and hate could be no more. Now, that actually could have been a good thing, but that's not the case, because again, on Yves Guillemot's trip to Saudi Arabia, he spoke with a Saudi Arabian company known as Savvy Games Group. Now, from what we understand, Saudi Arabia want to invest more in the gaming industry. Gaming is quickly becoming a leader in the entertainment industry. It makes almost the same amount of money as Hollywood at this point. And again, Saudi Arabia are trying to start to make a tourist name for themselves. They're trying to build themselves up to be more appealing to the West. Side note, if you want to do that, maybe stop stoning people to death for showing their ankles. Anyway, the TLDR is they're getting into gaming in a big way. So they speak with Yves Guillemot. They say, yes, we will give you lots and lots of money to make DLCs for your popular games, such as Assassin's Creed. Now, if you do this, we expect some sort of return. And I don't know what that is, because it's not really been publicized to my knowledge, but it could be a percentage on future Assassin's Creed sales or something like that. Now, don't get this confused with Vantage Studios, the brand new Assassin's Creed Ubisoft, flagship studio that they'll be releasing their new games under. Now, that is under a deal with Tencent, a Chinese mega corporation. Ubisoft know how to pick them, I'll tell you that. These are two separate things, but these are the guys with the big money. These are the guys that are pretty much digging Ubisoft out of a hole. And so in a roundabout way, that is why Mirage is getting a DLC in 2025, if I explain that properly. So, that begs the question, are we going to get more DLCs under this same sort of Savvy Games Group Saudi Arabian deal with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed? It could even branch to other Ubisoft games like Far Cry, the tragic failure such as Star Wars Outlaws. I'm not really going to talk about those because I'm the Assassin's Creed guy. I don't really know much about those titles. But here's what I think. If lots of people play this new Mirage DLC Valley of Memory when it comes out and it is received well, it gives Mirage a big boost in players, and maybe that in turn sells a few microtransactions in the Assassin's Creed Mirage Anima store. If it looks good on paper, I think the Savvy Games Group will say, alright, well, we'll fund another DLC. Maybe this time for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That's one of the popular modern Assassin's Creed titles. It's financially proven to already be very successful. It still has a big player base in 2025 onwards. So I could imagine Savvy Games Group saying, yeah, we'll fund a DLC for that game. And that might lead onwards to Valhalla and Assassin's Creed Origins. You know, these are the most modern Assassin's Creed games, I'll say. And I say that with quotations because, you know, Origins came out in 2017, but it's under that same sort of RPG saga game engine with the same sort of assets that can be shared. And I can imagine making a DLC, you know, for these RPG series, you could share assets and it would be a lot easier in that regard. And again, they are the most recent titles, so they still have a level of popularity. Who's to say we won't get an Odyssey DLC where we visit the shores of Italy? Or maybe we venture a little bit further. Maybe we get another Valhalla DLC where it just goes crazy with the whole Odin and Norse mythology stuff. That seemed to sell well in the past, so maybe? You know, being real, if Ubisoft are now getting the opportunity to make DLCs for these older games, because you gotta think, the reason companies don't usually make DLCs for their games that have come out in the past and they've, you know, been predated by newer games in the same series, they usually don't make DLCs for those older games because realistically they've got to put their priorities on what is current, what is new, to benefit from those new titles as much as they can. But, and we're seeing here with Assassin's Creed Mirage's new DLC, if a company gives you the incentive to do it where it wouldn't make sense not to do it, you're gonna do it. And that logic can hold true with any Assassin's Creed game. I think we could potentially see DLC go as far back as Assassin's Creed Unity or Syndicate. Again, you've got to think, Unity and Syndicate being very different than the more recent Assassin's Creed games, they're still within a very similar, if not the same engine. You know, Origins was built off the back of the Unity engine. You can see in pre-alpha footage running around in Egypt with Unity-style parkour, which is something I wish they kept in the game because the parkour in Origins it's blasphemous, bro. It's blasphemous, for a lack of a better term. Realistically, I don't see Ubisoft going as far back to make DLCs for games like Black Flag, especially since we're getting a Black Flag remake next year. And games like AC3 and the Ezio trilogy, I think those are just too old. I think because they were made for older hardware, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Ubisoft to, you know, make new DLC for those games. Do they have the legacy engines to work off still? Even if they do, is it worthwhile? Because again, you know, the Ezio trilogy was made for 360 and PS3 primarily. Yes, we have more updated versions of those games, such as the Ezio Collection and the AC3 remaster, but personally, I just can't see it. I just think those games are too old, at least for a story DLC. I don't think Ubisoft will see the benefit in doing that. But again, Unity to like Shadows, I could see them making a lot more content for those games. And another thing to point out is we're probably going to get more DLC through this deal for games like Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's the most recent AC game we have currently as of recording. Yes, a DLC called The Claws of Awaji has recently released, but so far we don't know officially if there will be any more DLCs. But again, even if there aren't any plans right now, maybe Savvy Games Group will come in and say, you know what, we'll give you some more cash, or we'll give you, you know, the means to make a DLC for Shadows now. Funny enough, the Valley of Memory DLC announcement for Mirage was insanely more popular on YouTube than the announcement of the Claws of Awaji DLC for Shadows, and I think that says something. But next I want to talk about potential stories we could see in older Assassin's Creed game DLCs, and I want to include this segment because I hope someone at Ubisoft sees this and says, that's a good idea, let me write that down in case, you know, we do get the means to make DLCs for these older games through this deal or a similar deal. So please, if you're watching Ubisoft, unlikely, but if you are, please listen. Before that though, again, reminder, if you're new to this channel, you're liking what you see, subscribe, maybe like the video. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so firstly, I want to start in chronological order of what I think is more likely for, you know, what games we could see DLCs being released for, and that's Assassin's Creed Unity. Okay, there's a fan favorite thing we always wanted, and that's Arno's hunt for Shay. As we know, Shay assassinated Arno's father at the end of Assassin's Creed Rogue, and that ties into the beginning of Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, there's a whole missed opportunity here where Arno just did not really seek revenge or even any type of knowledge about his father's killer. You could play that off as being, oh, it was talked about, you know, behind the scenes or off camera, but I think there is definitely a story to be told in that region. Arno becomes an assassin. Once the main story of Unity is concluded, you know, there's a space of time there where he has lost so much. He's lost his father, he's lost his stepfather, he's had to game end an assassin that was very close to him, and then he's lost Elise. He's lost a lot of people. As he becomes a more mature assassin, he's a little older, he has more time on his hands, he might think, you know what, let's go back and, you know, focus on the people I lost who have made me who I am now. And if there's anything I can rectify, let's do it. And maybe he starts at the beginning and says, okay, who killed my father? I know it was a Templar, but I never really looked into who the specific person was. So maybe then, even if Shay is a really old man at this point or even dead, it would be really interesting to play a story of an older Arno venturing to a new location in search for who his father's killer was. It'd make sense for him to head back to Versailles to start with and then follow tracks from there. If you're gonna do an AC Unity DLC, I would start with that. I think that would do really well when it comes to downloads, people re-downloading the game to play this DLC, because again, it's been a requested fan favorite for, you know, over 10 years at this point. The countless what if Arno hunted Shay videos on YouTube should speak to that. Anyway, we're going to move on now to Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Now, this is a personal request from me, but I think, you know, a lot of people might agree it might be a cool idea. I don't know. And that's Evie or Jacob Fry, I'm not sure who, could be either, venturing to a new city in England in search for an Isu temple of sorts. And I know this for a fact. The best city to set this DLC in Victorian London or Victorian England would be the city of Bath. Now, I am biased because that is my hometown, but that is a city that's always been underutilized in entertainment media. It's a very iconic, famous city for its architecture, for the location it's at, for the foundations of the city, which was originally a Roman-built city on hot springs, which they turned into the Roman baths, and then the city was eventually named after. The city itself, even today, has so much architecture that points towards like Minerva, Juno, you know, these ancient Roman gods. Now imagine applying the Assassin's Creed lore to this city. You could say somewhere below the Roman baths or something like that, there is an Isu temple. Maybe the hot springs themselves have some sort of Isu intervention. Perhaps the reason they are so rejuvenating and such interesting, you know, unique hot springs is because they're drawing from an Isu power in a temple below. There's something there, right? Surely. Even in the Assassin's Creed lore, we actually do have a whole Isu associated with the city of Bath, you know, piece of lore. I don't know off the top of my head, but there was a book about it called The Magus Conspiracy. The architecture of the city itself would be perfect for parkour. The buildings themselves and the architecture is like a more compact version of London, so it would fit in very much with the London aesthetics of AC Syndicate, but would feel better for parkour due to the more compact nature of the city. It's the perfect map to explore in a DLC, and that's what AC Syndicate should do. Moving on to Origins. Now, Origins, the DLC for this game that could be, there's a lot of potential. Now, firstly, what I'm about to say for my idea is that if it can ever be a sequel game, then it should be a sequel game rather than a DLC. But if there's never going to be a sequel to Origins' story, then this is the DLC we should have. And that is exploring Aya on her jaunt to Italy and how she started the Brotherhood there. It was Aya, aka Amunet, who split from Bayek at the end of the game. She ventured to Italy while he remained in Egypt. Bayek started the Hidden Ones in Egypt. Aya started it in Italy. And as we know in the Assassin's Creed lore, as well as just general ancient Roman history, there's so much of an Assassin's Creed story that could be told there. This could be the Assassin's Creed setting to bring a return to the philosophy of the Creed, you know? The whole politics aspect of things. Ubisoft, don't be scared of like deep politics in your narrative. If that stuff's written well and is balanced well with actual action, it could be a really good motivation for the player to sort of attack these targets, these Templars or these Order of Ancients, have a reason to do it. As well as that, I've always wanted to explore ancient Rome in a game in a meaningful way, you know, have a reason to do it. And I think, you know, either an Origins sequel or an Origins DLC would be perfect for this. I also found Aya as a character really interesting, and I feel like she could have been explored more in the base game. I understand why she wasn't, because the focus was more on Bayek. But yeah, I feel like there's room for this story somewhere. Now, I haven't really come up with anything for a DLC for Valhalla. Valhalla's such a massive game anyway, it's hard to really think, God, what can we do there? Off the top of my head though, I would just expand the map of England. I know that's a crazy thing to say, because England as a map in Valhalla is way too big and there's not enough content in that world, so you're just running on your horse for a lot of time. But one thing that really confused me when Valhalla came out is that for such a massive map, it wasn't even the entirety of England. Almost all of the southwest was cut off, Wales was cut off, and even parts of the north were cut off. Now, I think if you are going to expand the map of England, you've got to do it the right way. So maybe instead of just tacking it on to the main map of England, you create new sub-regions that require you to have a loading screen between the main map and the new region maps, because then you can create a new map, its own thing, and detail it, you know, add enough content in there so it doesn't feel bloated like the rest of the map. If you just add that onto the main map, I feel like there could be a level of disconnect there. We've already got separate regions in Valhalla, so it wouldn't feel out of place. And what can you do in these new regions? I don't know, I would just say more Assassin versus Templar stuff. I know I should say Hidden Ones versus Order of Ancients, but it's just a longer thing to say and it means the same thing. You could do it with Eivor, or you could even introduce a new character. I don't know, I have a lot less ideas for AC Valhalla, but it's something to think about. Now, lastly, before we end this video, there is one more interesting suggestion I have. And believe it or not, it's less DLC and more very small interactive experiences, almost like proof of concepts and extra content for Assassin's Creed involved with the Animus Hub. Now, I might make a separate video on this in the future going in more detail, so I won't go for too long on this subject in this video, but the general idea is that Ubisoft could experiment with different time period ideas by giving us one-off 5-hour stories with a character and a city or a small map. And basically it'll be kind of reminiscent of the Abstergo database sort of area we had at the beginning of Unity, where we saw all these locked off different time periods, like the Jazz Age Junkies, a Renaissance Italy one, and this and that. It was all locked off, but it was kind of there for show to sort of try and immerse you. But what if we actually did have something like this? Ubisoft could release monthly or bi-monthly, very small, linear, focused, less than 10-hour Assassin's Creed experiences which are different each time. And then you remember the old Assassin's Creed rating system in, I believe, Black Flag and Unity? When you'd finish a main mission, it would say, rate this mission out of 5 stars. The imbecile that was me when I was a young kid thought, oh, that's to tell Ubisoft if you like the mission so they can make more. Obviously it wasn't, it was just a fake Abstergo, you know, immersion type thing. But what if they could make it real? What if Ubisoft could say, here's a 3-hour story, you are a man named Raoul Wittgenstein, and you are an assassin or Templar perhaps during the Spanish Inquisition like the AC movie, or you are a Templar knight or assassin during Tudor England, a historical setting I would love to see explored, by the way. And you play through it, you get a taste of a cool Assassin's Creed story, and it's exciting because it's like, oh, that was a good one, can't wait for the one next month. But also, if it does well and you rate it well and a lot of players do the same, Ubisoft can say, oh, okay, so people want a game more like this, and then they can bring that character back or something similar and expand on that in a main Assassin's Creed title in the future. Again, I want to make a separate video about that, so I'll stop talking about that here, but it kind of leads into this whole, you know, DLC, new smaller stories for older games type of scenario. I will not take credit for this idea because friend of the show Cole from the ones who came before came up with this idea on our most recent episode of our podcast, the Odyssey, where he guest featured and he had this cool idea, you know, we should do something like this, or Ubisoft should, and it'll do wonders for the series, I guess. It's a cool idea, so shout out for that one. But overall, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know, we'll get a conversation going and build the AC community. As well as that, are you excited for the Mirage DLC? It's coming out in like a week or just over a week, and believe it or not, I'm actually kind of excited to play it, you know. I don't really like Mirage. I think Mirage is a bit of a disappointment, but you know, I've been playing a lot of the older AC games at the moment, and I'm just in my AC rabbit hole when I come to playing games at the moment. So yeah, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna see how it is. If it's bad, then I'll tell you guys how bad it is. If it's good, I'll tell you guys how good it is. And that's about it. If you like this video, give it a like. If you want to see more just like this, again, subscribe, and I will see you every single week. I love you guys. May the Father of Understanding guide us. I will see you soon. Goodbye. See you. Goodbye.